My name is Jatera McGee, and I'm currently a junior broadcast journalism major here at Maryland, as well as Miss College Park 2013 and a student worker here at Nyumburu. To start off tonight's evening, we'll be starting with a welcome and acknowledgement by Dr. Ronald Ziegler, Director of Nyumburu. And just so you know, this event is also co-sponsored by the Caribbean Student Association, the NAACP University of Maryland chapter, the Black Student Union, and the African Student Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Just make sure.
We're here tonight to celebrate a month in which we all hopefully have learned a lot about Black history and civil rights in America, particularly the legacy of our great late ancestor Carter G. Woodson and many other ancestors like Brother James Otis Williams. We're here tonight to commemorate and to also honor all of our fallen ancestors, to welcome our students, our faculty, our staff, our community members, our guests, our alumni, our retirees, and to share with you information about Black history. As we reflect on the past 27 days, think about what you've learned. Think about what you didn't learn, what you're going to learn between now and the end of the semester, or this summer, or this upcoming fall. I thank over the past month, Ms. Michelle Singletary, who's not here with us today, for sharing with us our Black History Month kickoff. Particularly thank tonight Dr. Mia Smith Bynum for coming here as a faculty member to share her wisdom and her knowledge with our students, to learn about family science. And also to our students, we ask that you think about our fallen brothers and sisters, Brother Trayvon Martin, Brother Jordan Davis. Think about this past weekend, we had so many activities on this campus. The first Pan-African Conference on this campus, which Brother Andrew Malinge was sitting there, coordinated so much that we had. Think about Alpha, the oratory contest that they had. We think about the Black alumni who had an event for Black males on this campus. We reflect on the artistic step show that we had this past weekend. So we have a lot of things that we were blessed to have during Black History Month. Think about the next few weeks that you have in terms of your studies, our students. Think about the person sitting next to you. What are you going to do to help that person? What are you going to do to bring another student into Nyumburu? You see we have tables that are not filled up. Why is that? We've done the best that we can do. We've done the best that we can do. We can always do better. Think about the person who should be here, but maybe they're not here. Now, it could be that they're involved in some other activity, and we support them in that regard. But think about those who may not have an activity and should be here. So, in welcoming you, enjoy the program. I salute Ms. Carswell for coordinating this event, our Nyumburu staff, Mr. Solomon Kamajan, Ms. Tina Lorick, Mr. Ren McGrew, Mr. David Hinton, all of our Nyumburu students who are here tonight, our ambassadors who are here to make our program a success. Who's walking in and coming in the doorway, our Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Camille Shorter Gooden, who's here tonight. So, again, thank you for coming and enjoy the program.
Did you know that Dr. Charles R. Drew organized and directed America's first large-scale blood bank during the early years of World War I? Dr. Drew's blood bank work resolved numerous problems in transfusion medicine in that era, helping to make blood supplies readily available for wartime use. He was also a surgeon who transformed surgical education at Howard and forged a tradition of excellence. Did you know that Garrett Morgan was able to come up with extraordinary inventions which have a tremendous impact on society, including the first human hair straightener, improved sewing machines, and traffic light, and most notably the gas mask. Morgan called the gas mask a safety hood and patented it as a breathing device. Did you know that George Crumb, who was the inventor of potato chips, Crumb never patented or attempted to widely distribute his potato chips. Nevertheless, they were soon on their way to becoming an international phenomenon via a number of aspiring snack food entrepreneurs around the country. And did you know that Philip B. Downing designed a metal box with 4 legs, which he patented on October 27, 1891. He called his device a street letter box, and it is the predecessor of today's mailbox. Thank you.
Next, we will have a musical selection by a retiree of the University of Maryland, Miss Angie Bass.
Lord, I just want to thank you for all you've done for me. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm going to sing a song. It's called Walk Around Heaven. A lot of our ancestors have gone on, and a lot of our friends have gone on. So I like to sing this for you all. One of these mornings, it won't be very long. You look for me, and I'll be going home. I am going to a place I have nothing to do. But just walk around heaven all day. When I get to heaven, I'm gonna sing and shout. Nobody will be able to put me out. My mother will be waiting, and my father and my brother too. We'll just walk around heaven all day. Falling up above, Mama, can you hear me praying? I need you to be by my side. And Lord, when my way gets cloudy, I need you to be my God. And I know every day will be Sunday. The Sabbath will have no end. And all we got to do now is just praise His holy name. And when He says, well done, on that bill of the red has been walking on. We'll just walk around heaven. We'll walk around heaven. I can't wait to see my mother and my father. I can't wait to see my Savior. We'll just walk around heaven. We'll walk around heaven. We'll walk around heaven all
Did you know that Josiah Henderson fled slavery in Maryland in 1830 and later founded a settlement in Ontario, Canada for other black citizens who had escaped? His autobiography, The Life of Josiah Henderson, formerly a slave, now an inhabitant of Canada, as narrated by himself, written in 1849, is believed to have been Harriet Beecher Stowe's inspiration for the main character in Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Can we give Miss Angie Bass another round of applause? Next, the president of the Community Roots, as well as the W.E.B. Du Bois Honor Society, and senior government and politics major Andrew Malinge, will be giving a presentation of a film.
Good afternoon. I will be sharing with you a poem by Langston Hughes. It's called As I Grew Older, and I thought that it had a lot to do with a lot of seniors in the room, as well as I think this can relate to a lot of different people in this room as well. It was a long time ago. I have almost forgotten my dream, but it was there then, in front of me, bright like a sun, my dream. And then the wall rose slowly, slowly between me and my dream. Rose until it touched the sky, the wall, shadow. I am black. I lie down in the shadow, no longer the light of my dream before me, above me. Only the thick wall, only the shadow. My hands, my dark hands, break through the wall, find my dream. Help me to shatter this darkness, to smash this night, to speak this shadow into 1,000 lights of sun, into 1,000 whirling dreams of sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, we'll have another musical selection by Miss Angie Bass.
How many of you have Jesus in your life? Have you show hands? All right. Keep him in your life. I'm going to sing song Falling in Love with Jesus. And I'm doing 2 selections, right in. And the second one is On Time God. So I like to come down here. That's okay with you. Thank you. I'm going to jump. I'm going to break my neck. Falling in love with Jesus falling in love with Jesus. Oh, falling in love with Jesus is the best thing I've ever done. In His arms I feel protected. In His arms, never disconnected. No, 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 no. In His arms, I feel protected. There's no place I'd rather be. Somebody will help me sing this one. Falling in love with Jesus, yeah. Come on now. Falling in love with Jesus. Oh, falling in love with Jesus is the best thing I've ever done. In His arms, I feel protected. In His arms, never disconnected. No, 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 no. In His arms, I feel protected. There's no place I'd rather be. You know what? I've been going through a lot of trials and tribulations, but I find that Jesus is the key to our situations in life. If you watch the news, you know how bad it is. But you just call on Jesus, call on the Lord. He will help you through any situation. So now I can hear everything I've been saying here. Come on. Falling in love with Jesus. Falling in love with Jesus. Oh, falling in love with Jesus is the best thing I've ever done. In His arms, I feel protected. Oh, yes, I do. In His arms, never disconnected. No, 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 no. In His arms, I feel protected. There's no place I'd rather be. No, no, no. There's no place I'd rather be. Falling in love with Jesus. There's no place I'd rather be. There's no place I'd rather be. All right, thank you. Stand a little bit. Come on, let's praise God. Because He's an on-time God. Come on. He didn't have to wake y'all up this morning. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. All right. See, baby? That's right. Come on. On-time God. So y'all can help me with this one, right? On-time God. We say, on-time. You got it? You feel it? I'm glad somebody over here feels that. How about over here? You all feel it? Okay, so we'll have you sing that. Right, get up here. Let's do some shouting, praising God. Because He's been so good to us. You ready? Clap our hands. Come on, y'all. Stand up there. Clap your hands. Come on. Come on. It's a long time gone. Yes, he is. Oh, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. John said he may not come when you want it, but he'll be there right on time. I'm telling you, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. Let's say it again loud. Come on, y'all. He's a long time gone. Yes, he is. Whoa, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. John said he may not come when you want it, but he'll be there right on time. Tell you he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. You can ask the children of Israel. Tripped at the Red Sea. By that mean of Pharaoh and his army. They had water all around them, and Pharaoh on their tracks. From out of nowhere, God stepped in and threw the high back just like that. Oh, let me tell you, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. Oh, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. John said he may not come when you want it, but he'll be there right on time. Tell me he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. You can ask the 5,000 hungry souls there on that banks of the river, 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. What a miracle! Keep upon the multitude. But what he did way back then, he'll do the same thing for you and me. Oh, let me tell you, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. Oh, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. John said, may not come, but he'll be there right on time. I'm telling you, he's a long time gone. Yes, he is. How many people know he's on time? He's on time.
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 Oh yes, he's on time. He's on time, y'all. He's on time. He's on time. Oh yes, he's on time. Just like Job, how he waits on the Lord. He's on time. Oh yes, he's on time. He's on time, y'all. He's on time. He's on time. Oh yes, he's on time. He's on time. God. Oh yes, he is. Oh yeah. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Bass, for your introduction. Mr. Solomon Kamadon, Director of Student Involvement and Public Relations at the Nyumburu Cultural Center. We'll now be introducing our keynote speaker.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In Kiswahili, habari za jioni, which means good evening in Swahili. I'm going to read the biography of Dr. Smith Bynum, but allow me to deviate a little bit because he was a friend of mine. And so, if you don't mind, it's so formal, but I want to make sure I'm informal a little bit as well. Dr. Mia Smith Bynum is an associate professor of family science in the School of Public Health at the University of Maryland, College Park. A clinical psychologist by training, Dr. Smith Bynum is an expert in African American mental health, family interaction, and communication in ethnic minority families, parenting, and racial identity. She also has expertise in adolescent mental health, adolescent sexual behavior, and parent-adolescent communication about difficult topics. Dr. Smith Bynum earned a bachelor's degree with honors from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology from the Department of Psychology at the University of Virginia. She completed a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in child and family development at the University of Georgia before joining faculty in the Department of Psychological Sciences at Purdue University in 2001. In 2008, Dr. Smith Bynum was promoted to Associate Professor of Psychological Sciences. She joined the Department of Family Science at the University of Maryland in 2010, where she is currently Director of the Black Families Research Group. Her research has been supported by external grants and several entities, including the National Institute of Mental Health and the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. Her work is published in several professional research journals in psychology and family studies. And in addition to her faculty duties, Dr. Smith Bynum performs consulting work on research with ethnically diverse populations and academic career coaching for students and faculty that are members of underrepresented groups. So with that formal that I had to just trudge through. And I say trudge through because it's obvious that when you look at the biography within that program, you can tell that this sister is supremely talented. She has paid her dues academically and then some. She is a wonderful mother. She has a 10-year-old son, I believe, 10-year-old son, and I've seen her 10-year-old son, and he is a direct reflection of his mother, not just superficially in terms of how he looks so much like his mother, but also the way he carries himself. So beyond all of the academies and all of the letters behind her name and all the things that she has done to earn the respect of being an associate professor with tenure on this campus. Earned, I say earned. Nothing has been given to her. Earned. What I want to say about her is I met her, I believe, somewhere around the time of 2010, 2011. And instantly when I met this sister, she wanted to get involved. She wanted to find out about how she could become more intricately involved in Nyumburu and the student populations that we serve, predominantly black students, but in general. That's the kind of sister she is. That's the kind of scholar that I support. That's the kind of Du Bois, in the spirit of Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson kind of scholar that I support. Because as you know, Dr. Carter G. Woodson and Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, the reason I love them so much is because they didn't allow their PhDs, or being the first and second African Americans to receive their PhDs from Harvard University respectively. They didn't allow that to prevent them from delving deep into their community. Matter of fact, they used them as conduits to delve deeper into their community and to use their scholarship to help their communities. Not to distance themselves and say, I'm at this ivory tower, I'm at the University of Maryland, I'm at Harvard, and I'm going to camp out in this ivory tower and genuflect and try to appease and placate other folks. No, I'm going to use my degrees to try to help underrepresented communities and groups of students. Okay, whether that may be African American students, whether that may be Latino, whether that may be women. That is the kind of academic that Dr. Smith Bynum is. That's the kind of academic that Dr. Joseph Richardson, who was in the back there, that's the kind of academic he is. So, in my estimation, if we were going to bring in an academic to end this Black History Month, and I say this is just a stepping stone, this is Black History Lifetime, because that's exactly what Carter G. Woodson wanted when he created Negro History Week in 1926. He wanted it simply to be a stepping stone, a trampoline to propel us into further research of African people, not just within the manufactured borders of what the United States is, but throughout the African diaspora, including the continent itself. And so we couldn't have found anyone better. We simply couldn't. I'm going to call you Mia, Dr. Mia, if you will, but she's my friend. She's my workout partner. I mean, you received emails on my behalf, on her behalf, that I've sent out. That is the kind of scholar she is. She's been a friend to Nyumburu, and you know, I give Ms. Carswell all props due for selecting Dr. Mia, not just because she's from Georgia, not just because she's from Atlanta, but so without further ado, and listen, please, people, grasp every word that she puts out there, but also when it's done, take the initiative to approach her while you're breaking bread. Approach her. Ask her about what she's doing, because she is extending so many olive branches for you to get involved with the work she's doing, to gain, you know, experience that is going to help embolden and bolster up your resumes, and also allow you to and teach you how to reach back and help your communities, which are our communities. Take the time. These are the kind of scholars that we need to support, because they're supporting us and they're supporting our communities. And I'm not making this stuff up. That's why I had to get through all this stuff, because I don't know her as this. I know who she is academically. I know who she is professionally. But what really makes her somebody who I have the utmost respect for, as I do Dr. Joseph Richardson, is what they do in the community, what they do in our community, day in and day out. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage my friend, Dr. Mia.
He's making me blush. Thank you, Solid, for that heartfelt introduction, and thank you so much to Nyumburu Center for inviting me. One of the things, I've been here now, this is the top of my 5th year at Maryland, and what I can say in terms of the short time that I've been here so far is that this has just been a wonderful place. Oh, I see familiar faces in the audience. This has just been a wonderful place for me to set up my research career. I think Solomon described it better than I could, that I really do care passionately about these topics. The Nyumburu Center has been integral to me setting up my research here, and to Solomon, Dr. Z, Ms. Carswell, thank you so much. I do consider you part of my academic family, and I'm so delighted and honored and flattered to be here. And I see some familiar faces, thanks to those folks who I know outside of this space who came out to support me. I really do appreciate it, because it's very cold out there tonight, and I know that you could be somewhere at home getting ready for scandal, as I will be, but you came out to listen and to enrich yourselves and to be a part of celebrating Black History Month here on campus. I also want to thank our musical soloists. I knew it was going to be a great celebration, but I didn't know I was going to go to church too. So thank you so much. You did a beautiful job. It was very inspiring, and I do appreciate that. And let me give a formal greetings to all the members of the University of Maryland community who are here this evening, to students, staff, and faculty, and also those community members who are here joining us as well. Before I get into my formal remarks, I don't know, can they see this? I'm kind of, okay, thank you. So when I thought about what I would say this evening, I thought a lot about my own formative years and what Black History Month and really the celebration of Black history and what I came to know about that as a child and also as a young adult, and how that has had an integral influence in who I am as a person, and who I am as a scholar and an instructor and a role model and a mentor. So I did grow up in Atlanta, Georgia, a city that is steeped in Black history and modern, particularly the modern day civil rights movement in particular. I have vivid memories of the legalization of the MLK holiday in 1983, because as you know, Martin Luther King was born in the city of Atlanta. And I remember going on tours of his childhood home. That was a part of it. I think I did the field trip a number of years in school, maybe 3 or 4 times. So it was just part of the air. I grew up in the SWAT, the collection of neighborhoods in Atlanta known as Southwest Atlanta. I remember marching in the MLK holiday parades with my high school friends throughout those years. But it wasn't until I moved away to attend college elsewhere in the Southeast did I really come to appreciate the presence of all of that history and the community-wide recognition of the importance of Black history and Black progress, and how it impacted the person I became. In fact, I just sort of took it for granted that every place was like Atlanta, okay? So Atlanta had the catchphrase that it was the city that was too busy to hate. And it reflected the ways that the political leadership in the city of Atlanta, Black and white, worked together to open the doors for African Americans, especially through affirmative action policies that fostered access. Okay? And this access, along with numerous prestigious HBCUs that comprise the Atlanta University Center, or the AU Center as it is also known, and the collection of all of these, the timing, the policies, the educational institutions, and the place, it helped create the Black middle class that is thriving in Atlanta right now. And I moved there as a child in the early 1970s, and I grew up during that era. And what I remember at the time was that not really feeling a sense of boundaries in terms of who I could become. If I decided that I wanted to become a psychologist, that wasn't really something that was all of that odd, because when we think about some of the racial stereotypes that we cast towards African Americans in the media and other public spaces, in my high school, I was fortunate enough to go to a middle-class, predominantly Black high school. That was what Southwest Atlanta was. When I was in school, the honor students were Black. The homecoming queens were Black. I mean, it was like, okay, whatever you want to do, you can be a part of the leadership structure in that school. You can be one of the popular kids, but you weren't going to be excluded because of your race. So there's absolutely no doubt that the country has made tremendous progress on the issues of race in these times. Like many of you, I attended the commemoration of the 1963 March on Washington just this past August. And I was able to bring my 10-year-old son with me so that he could begin to appreciate the importance of that event. And there were all kinds of signs that people held up, and there was must have been 10 mini marches that happened during the actual commemoration. There were signs of Trayvon Martin, signs about ending the new Jim Crow, signs about all of the stop and frisk policies, if you will. And he was asking me this. He said, "Mommy, who is Jim Crow? Like, I keep seeing this everywhere. Who is Jim Crow?" And so we were able to have that conversation. He's still too young to really understand what that means, but I planted the seed. Before I even moved here, I brought my son to the inauguration of President Obama in 2008, because when that happened, I happened to be visiting the area in that fall, and I sensed that something was changing underfoot. I said, this is going to be a big moment, and I want to be here, and I want to have my son here. We would watch TV, we'd say, "Barack Obama," we would cheer, and my son would cheer right along with me. I know he didn't really know what was going on, but because I think he was only 5. But now he's a little bit older, and he has a better appreciation. And you know what's actually started to happen as we've watched President Obama endure some of the withering criticism of his policies and of his presidency. He started to ask the question, why don't they like President Obama? He's picking up on these issues already at 10 years old. So this is very important in terms of helping young people understand where we're going as a country, and also to understand the current political debate right now. So we must ensure that African Americans and our contributions to the United States are never forgotten or lost to the history books. And it is why these celebrations are so critically important. In these times, I watched in dismay and frustration our public discourse about the importance or relevance of race in America. A new term has been coined to describe the era that some believe that we are in: post-racial. Have you all heard that term before? I would argue that today what we're actually dealing with is racism 2.0. Ubiquitous and subtle, and often operating just below the conscious awareness of most Americans who are not its targets. So here are a few examples, and I'm sure many of you will recognize these. These new laws are supposedly designed to protect the public. Protect the public from whom? Okay? So one of the speakers today mentioned Jordan Davis and Trayvon Martin. And this is the other gentleman who was shot and killed and was an alum of FAMU University. The assumption that African American men are criminals and dangerous, though they are alive and well, and that they are enshrined in policy. And some folks would argue, some of our politicians would argue that this is exactly where we need to be. But this is, Black Americans in our movement throughout the United States in terms of where we are, what neighborhoods we belong in, what spaces we belong in. They have been policing Black bodies since the beginning of time, or since the beginning of the formation of this country. Now I'm going to show you a clip in a minute, because when I think about what I know about African American history and how the longer I do scholarship on African American families, and I try to really get a grasp on why some of our families are struggling and some of our families are thriving, I have to ask myself, what's really at the root of that? Then I go back to the history. And when you go back to the history, you find an answer to what looks like stereotypes. So because we're sort of fulfilling stereotypes here, that African Americans really are this way, that we can't take care of our families, that we are not ambitious, that we don't want to do right by those who we love. It's all stereotypes, but you have to know the history. And I've begun to incorporate that more and more into my teaching. So one of these new issues that's come to the front are all of these ways in which different parts of the U.S., different states have attempted or are in the process of passing voter suppression laws, okay? So Ohio, Pennsylvania, I could even name the states. Most of them are red states, as you might guess. But, all of this sort of blanket or stated concern that there's a lot of fraud out there. And really what it is doing is actually disenfranchising folks under the shroud of law. Okay? So I want to show you this clip. So it's going to feature Representative John Lewis, who is from Atlanta. And he is, they're having a session in Congress. I'm just going to set it up a little bit. So during this session, Republican Congressman Paul Brown, he presents this notion or this idea that we should defund the enforcement section of the Voting Rights Act. I think it's Section 4. So he presents this proposal that rather than devote funds towards checking to make sure that any changes in policies that will affect voting law get approved by the Justice Department and being ensured that they are right. And this is all for those southern states and for some other specific jurisdictions for whom the history has been so bad and so awful that they were still monitored by the federal government. So I'm going to switch out of this for just a moment. So this is Paul Brown, and so he's going to present this to the members who were present in this particular hearing. and listen at what John Lewis says to the members that are present. And this is why it's so important to know the history.
And the provision of vocation is simply to ensure integrity at the polls. It is hard and difficult and almost unbelievable that any member, but especially a member from the state of Georgia, will come and offer such amendment. Just think, before the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it was almost impossible for many people in the state of Georgia, in Alabama, in Virginia, in Texas, to register to vote, to participate in the democratic process. It's shameful that you would come here tonight and say to the Department of Justice that you must not use 1 penny, 1 cent, 1 dime, $1 to carry out the mandate of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. We should be opening up the political process and letting all of our citizens come in and participate. People died for the right to vote. Friends of mine, colleagues of mine, speak out against this amendment.
And that's what it is. It's shameful.
I apologize to my dear friend from Georgia if he's gotten angry with this amendment. It's never my intent to do so, and I'm going to ask unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment.
I saw this clip on the news about a year and a half or so ago, and I wanted to show you that clip in this talk because there's a couple of things that are happening here that sort of reflect the theme of the importance of the knowledge of the civil rights movement and what's happening with policy. So Representative Lewis, so he's not just a congressman. He is walking and breathing history. Okay? Let me repeat that again. He lived the experience. And because he was there for the battle, he got beaten and bloodied for these rights and for these laws that have passed. And we watched how in the political discourse and what's happening in Congress, these efforts to roll back all of that hard work. And what I get concerned about as an instructor is, John Lewis was the representative for the district that I grew up in. And so I kind of have that connection there. Because I am a child of the 1970s and 80s, I remember just enough, was past the 60s, so obviously I can't claim that lived experience. But I remember what it was like in the 70s, and it was pretty bad in terms of race relations and overt prejudice and just our understanding of where race relations were at that time. And so I really have an appreciation for how powerful it was to have someone who literally could have ended up giving his life in the way that many civil rights leaders did in order for us to have basic human rights. And what will happen when he's not with us? Okay? Who will fight that fight? And you won't even know to engage in the fight if you don't know the history. Okay? So these voter suppression laws, they are modern day poll taxes, but you have to know about the poll taxes to be able to see the thread and connect the dots and to speak out about that. So I'm not going to stay up here too long. As our preachers say, I'm going to make a couple points and I'm going to take my seat. But I'm going to talk to you briefly about why Black history is important. So this is my effort, at least, to defend why Black history is so important. So first, so Black history, it educates, okay? It protects, and it inspires. Okay, so as I just attempted to illustrate with that clip, You have to know the history to understand what is happening with today's current events. And I'm so glad to see so many students here tonight, and I'm glad this is not my classrooms. I kind of have to mince my words a little bit more. I have to dance around the issue so I won't get terrible teaching evaluations for speaking the truth. But I can speak the truth to this audience, right? So it is important that you take these Black history courses. You have a fabulous staff here who they know the history. They've taken the time to provide the intellectual and social space for you to learn about what it means to be African American, or what it means to just understand race in America. So when I teach in my own classes, I because of my own growing awareness of how important it is for me as a social scientist to know a little bit of history, because I feel a real responsibility. I know when I'm standing up there and I'm teaching about any of these groups, Latino families, Asian American families, Black families, and any other families that have been oppressed, that this may be the only time that I get to plant that seed. So I have to say to them, if you really want to understand what's going on in our urban centers today and why some of our families are struggling, you have to go back to the housing policies that have been in place for generations. And that still happen to current day. You have to understand that the Black middle class is a very recent phenomenon. When I look at Howard University and its role in shaping the Black middle class in this area, many of the lawyers I know who are from this area went to Howard. Many of the doctors that I know who were from this area went to Howard. The HBCUs play a critical role in helping to support the educational mission. They help many of our students from HBCUs fill our graduate classrooms. So these institutions, the HBCUs being just one example, they're critical to the success of our communities. So we have to know the history to understand what's going on in the present day. So this other piece of this has to do with how little of this is often taught in K through 12. So I knew some Black history, but it wasn't until I sat in the seminar courses as an undergrad where I really learned, like, oh my gosh, you mean we did all that? Or, you mean Jim Crow was that bad? I didn't really know. You can't get the picture from just watching the black and white footage. You've got to read the first-hand accounts. You've got to listen to the experts talk to you about what happened in each decade that formed the modern civil rights movement and how that galvanized African Americans and others who were outraged by what they saw. And I really do believe, and this is why I haven't given this up, that if students who are not in this particular racial group, if they really knew how bad it was, we'd have a lot easier time having conversations about race. Because people don't know, they come into universities of Maryland and other places like this with assumptions that are really a reflection of all the negative stereotypes and ideas that are out there about African Americans that have been there since the beginning of time. And so when I'm in class, I try to make a deliberate effort to create somewhat of a safe space so that I can open minds. I'm not naive enough to believe that I'm going to move someone from A to Z in the course of 16 weeks when the focus of my course is not necessarily only on race or African Americans, but I can plant the seed. And then the rest of their undergraduate experiences, their experiences when they leave Maryland, hopefully I've given them some type of insight or some bit of knowledge, because they're going to be someone's boss, someone's co-worker, someone's subordinate, and they need to know in this globalized world that we're living in that we all stand on some type of generational privilege that got us here. That is not a artifact of race or genetic benefits that are conferred to one group over another. So Black history also promotes mutual respect and understanding across groups. Now in my research, I study a construct called racial socialization. And I'm studying it primarily with African American families, but you can really look at this in white families, Latino families, any group. And what we know is that when parents teach kids about African American history and culture, it provides them with psychological armor. It grounds you. When I went to Chapel Hill and I would run up against challenges there as a student in a predominantly white university, I didn't question whether or not I belonged there or whether I could do it, because I had that foundation. I knew who I was. And a positive black identity predicts positive academic achievement in African American kids and teenagers. The data bear it out. So to be black and to be proud is good for your academic achievement, it's good for your self-esteem, it's good for your mental health. And so young people here, make sure you deliberately teach that to your kids, because it's armor, because we are in the era of racism 2.0. They may get these subtle messages that, you know, I don't really belong, or I feel like I don't, and I can't put my finger on why. And you will have an antidote, a ready answer to counteract those messages. And then finally, this sort of gets lost in our public discourse occasionally, but not all of the time. But the modern day civil rights movement provided the model for other civil rights movements that followed. So the modern day women's movement is in part a product of the African American struggle. And look at what's happening with gay rights and gay marriage rights in America. I mean, when I started teaching on gay families, when I first got here, because I teach a survey course, we cover all families in this course. Sign up for it if you haven't. And I remember talking to students about the policies and being excited about the potential, but I didn't think that just 4 years later, look at how it's sweeping the country. I think that all of those policy changes, when you trace it back far enough, the activism, it goes back to the black civil rights movement, okay? And what that does is that it has forced the country to live up to its creed that all men and women are created equal. Because that's what this is really about, is that people really want to be recognized for their full and three-dimensional humanity and to not have to hide who they are because it makes someone else uncomfortable. You guys have been following what happened in Arizona, that law, my religious freedom is impacted because if I have to serve gay Americans, somehow that pierces my sense of my ability to worship. And really all that is veiled discrimination cast as law, okay? And the economics is what caused Governor Brewer to veto that. But people have to speak up, they have to be active, they have to make their views known. And so I will close with this following quote from Vernon Jordan, who is a civil rights icon. In his memoir, Vernon Can Read, he wrote, "Black people saved this country's soul. And in doing so, it paved the way for other groups in our country who have yet to still have full protections under the law." And I hope that in the brief time I've been with you that I've planted a seed. And I hope that you see that there are possibilities that each of you can fulfill. Never doubt that you don't belong where I'm standing here now or wherever your heart seeks to take you. But know that you'll need that psychological armor and you'll need that history to remind yourself that the more things change, the more things stay the same, but you have to keep on keeping on. Thank you so much.
Did you know that, born February 27, 1897, which is today, in Philadelphia, Marian Anderson rose to international acclaim as a professional singer. Anderson was the first African-American invited to perform at the White House by President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his wife Eleanor. She is best known for performing at the Lincoln Memorial on Easter after not being allowed to perform at Constitution Hall. Much of Anderson's life would ultimately see her breaking down barriers for African-American performers, such as being the first African-American to perform at the New York Metropolitan Opera in 1955. She also sang the national anthem at President Kennedy's inauguration and received the Presidential Medal of Freedom and Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award.
and sing.
Angie, you gonna lead this?
Okay, are we all standing? Lift every voice and sing, tell earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the lifting skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.